everybody. Welcome back to A Freak Sense World with your host, Charlie Freak, and I'm coming to you live from Mexico. And just to let you know, not to rub it in or anything, but it's, I think, 40. Where Santos is, just south of us in Oaxaca, it might even be hotter, or seem hotter, because he's on the ocean, so he's got the humidity. But it's hot in Mexico right now. And if you want some more weather reports, Josh X is joining us as well today, and Josh is in Spain, and Josh was just telling me it's about 32, 33 in Spain today. So where we are is
Now that Gaz is here, you'll be live.
Hi Gary, are we live? Can I continue? Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. A new Skype. So a few issues with Skype, but and we just lost Josh, but we're going to get Josh back as well. So. Everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. This is a very important, let me just say that, a very, very, very important show today. And in particular because of what's going on right now in the world. And in fact, the truth about World War I and World War II and about Adolf Hitler's Germany, in my estimation, has never been more important than this precise moment in time. I think that there have been a lot of confluences that have brought Santos and I and Josh together. And I want to share with everyone that all three of us share the same very strong passion with regard to the truth of the real, actual truth to this story. And if some of you out there today are taking the mindset that no matter what you're here today, you're going to stand in the way, or going to stand in the face of the gnosis, the truth that we're sharing with you, that's your choice. But understand from all three of us that we will not be doing any kind of apologizing for what we're sharing today, because what we're going to share with you today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And you need to know this. Humanity needs to understand, because the only way we can fully appreciate how disparate the circumstances are in the world right now is to know how we got here. And this particular one person that we're talking about today, and the events of World War I and World War II, are the reason why things are the way they are today, and why things are as disparate as they are. So I just cannot state this enough, that this show is so very important, and I'm blessed to have Santos, Bonacci, and Josh X with me today. And just before we get started, I just want to quickly, once again, thank everyone, Gary, Vanessa, Patty, everyone at People for People Radio, for being such an incredible platform, and for allowing us the freedom to be able to do landmark, groundbreaking shows such as this. They're interested in providing the truth, and it really is a beautiful channel. And just so you know, besides Santos, of course, has his brilliant show here and our show, you have so many other incredible shows here, like Shaziz, which is the Knights of the Round Table, and of course, my favorite, the Turtle and Crow Show. Just brilliant stuff. So it really is a platform that you need to sign into and check back again and again, because there is just such great gnosis that is constantly coming here. So with all of that said, I'm going to start by welcoming in our guests. We're going to start with Santos and make sure his connection is good, because it was cutting in and out a little bit ago. So Santos, my friend, I love you, my brother, so much, and thank you for joining us, and I'll have you say hi to everybody.
Yep, thank you, Charlie. Much appreciated, and great to be with you again. And it's a pleasure and honour. And hello, everybody. Welcome.
And it's my honor, Santos. It's my honor. Thank you, my friend. And let's now cross the Atlantic and go to the highlands of Spain, and let's say hi to the absolutely equally wonderful Josh X. Josh, how are you doing today, buddy?
Oh, mate, I'm doing so wonderful, and I send love and gratitude to you all, and I hope you're in a wonderful space and are very genuinely happy like I am. Sending you lots of love.
Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do to start the show today is I'm going to go back to Santos and then Josh, and I'm going to ask them to tell us why they, in their own words, why they are so passionate. Because believe me, I didn't know that that Santos and Josh would be doing this show with me. I had no idea. I thought that I was one of only a few that felt the way that I did with regard to Adolf Hitler's Germany. And when I spoke to Santos, I was absolutely blown away by his passion, and the same with Josh. So let's start with Santos. Santos, in your own words, tell us why you are so drawn to this story and why you are so passionate about getting the truth out.
Well, I was pretty conditioned growing up a Jehovah's Witness to, in a certain way, toward Germany's Hitler's Germany, rather, and because there were always stories and articles about the persecution of the Jehovah's Witnesses and how nasty Mengele was and Joseph Goebbels, and I grew up with these names, you know, and they were horrifying. It was just so much mind control, not only at school but also at the church where I went and grew up with, and also was a part of for decades, you know. So I remember the Purple Triangle experiences of ones who came out of Czechoslovakia and Poland and gave their experiences of what it was like to be persecuted. So for me it was very, 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 very real, and there could only be one side, you know. So eventually, I think it was my brother, he, about 15 years ago, he was watching a video, like, I think it was like the one Greatest Story Never Told type, where it showed a whole different side, totally different side of what was happening. And my brother basically set me on the path. I immediately looked at that side and said, well, I'm going to have an open mind, because this is too overwhelming, you know, with evidence, and it's totally the opposite of what I was taught and indoctrinated with. So, and I remember my uncles, they were good men, and they were my grandfather's brothers, and they served in the military in Italy under Mussolini, and they always mentioned the good things that happened in those days, such as the Freemasons being shut up and closed down, so that was the end of Freemasonry when they turned up, and how the economy prospered. It was like it was a golden age, and so I just recalled that. I never really took them seriously, my uncles, but they always kept saying, oh, Hitler and Mussolini were good guys, man. The history's got it wrong. And these are my humble uncles that, you know, really, they were political and they served in the military, and they came over to Australia, and I remember them clearly saying that, especially toward Hitler. So, but of course, I was different. I was Jehovah's Witness, and it was drummed into me that everything was one-sided. So when I saw this video, there was a lot of stuff that hit me like a brick wall. And those are the things that are undeniable now with all the revisionist history going on, and some great scholars like Dennis Weiss, I think his name is.
Yes.
Yep. And so my mind is completely open, and my opinions, I will keep them to myself, but I will try and be, impart.
Okay, Santos just cut out there for a sec. And I really echo those sentiments that Santos said as well, that I don't really want to have any opinions on this. I just want to deal with the overwhelming factual evidence that exists. It's actually embarrassing in the other direction. So while Santos gets back online, let's jump over to Josh. And Josh, same thing, just tell us what brought you so passionately to this story as well.
Yep. So that's my introduction.
Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Santos. Josh, let's go back over and same thing. Let's just hear your reason for why you were drawn to this story and your passion for it.
Yeah, it was. I'd say it was around about 2007 when I was trying to overload myself with information, figuring out the upside-down world, putting it back the right way. And I come across a similar thing as Santos, and I started to realize that, everything that we've been taught in the media is a complete flip-flop of the truth. So I started to dig in towards Hitler because he was a big part of our programming. And when I started to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and I started to find things out about the unveiling of his occultism and his interest in the self, the symbolism, and all the synchronicities to do with the symbolism that was put around the topic by the media, you can see that every single thing that was put there for us to see with a negative impact was actually really positive, ancient, and has always been here for us to see. So the Matrix has put in a systematic block for
Okay, it looks like on the Skype call, both Santos and Josh just dropped off. Okay, so sorry about that, everybody, but both Santos and Josh just dropped off, and this new Skype platform is and has been very unstable, so I apologize for that. And obviously both Santos and Josh know to just, as soon as they can, connect back in, and as soon as they do, we'll go back over to them. So very, very quickly, I wanted to say that, my history growing up in, like I said, a very sleepy town in Canada, which was Victoria, British Columbia. I actually had a History 12 teacher and a Geography 12 teacher, Mr. Trappler, and he was born in Germany. His family moved after the war to Canada, and he was my teacher, and he was a great teacher, a really wonderful man, and he really opened my eyes just in a very casual way, just encouraging to not necessarily accept the general narrative and to dig deeper and to consistently dig deeper. And throughout my life, it's really interesting, as I've shared with so many of you, I've had a very deep connection to John and Robert Kennedy, and I've had a very deep connection to Adolf Hitler's Germany. And I don't really fully understand these things, or at least didn't until actually fairly recently, and then it all pieced together and all really started to make sense. So for me, I have always found myself questioning the narrative about this, and and have constantly dug deeper. And honestly, it wasn't really until the advent of the internet that more information made itself available to me. And like Santos said in his introduction to this, the more you actually honestly dig into the truth of what really happened, it's just overwhelming. And in fact, after a while, it just becomes embarrassing. And one of the things I'm going to start with today is that when Hitler took power, now this is late 32, when Hindenburg asked Hitler's National Socialist Party to form the basis to a coalition government. That's very late in 32. And really sort of the beginnings of it are in early 33. And when he did this, I mean, Germany was an absolute total mess, a complete total mess. And if anyone is thinking that there was any kind of plan at this point in the early stages of Hitler's power in Germany, to do anything to do with the Jews, it just isn't there. And of course, from a commonsensical level, you know that that's the case, because when he came to power in a parliamentary-style government, in a minority government, as part of a very weak and tenuous coalition, there was nothing that was ever going to get done. There never is in any one of these minority governments in the British parliamentary system, which is designed to fail, not succeed. So there was nothing. Hitler, obviously, when he was imprisoned after the beer hall push in Munich and spent a year in jail, he wrote what became Mein Kampf. And in Mein Kampf, he spoke very deeply as to what is the source of the problems. But see, if you haven't read it for yourself, and I mean really read Mein Kampf for yourself, then you've heard other people interpret Mein Kampf for you, and then really you know nothing about that book. And do you know that Mein Kampf, as censored as that book is, it actually is, or was during the 20th century, I think the fourth or fifth best-selling book in all of the 20th century. And again, it was massively banned everywhere, and it still was of the 20th century, fourth or fifth highest-selling book of the 20th century. So you need to read it for yourself. And the reason that it's so important is because what Hitler is talking about as the boogeyman to the world is the exact same boogeyman that we're dealing with now. Now, he gave a name to it as the Zionist Jews. And the Zionist Jews isn't entirely accurate because, of course, the people that are really in charge are hidden in the shadows, and they want to cast the viewpoint of the masses in certain directions which take you away from the origins of this control mechanism, the people that really do rule over us. And those are, as Santos has taught us time and again, these are the Phoenicians. And these ultimately come from the allegory in the Bible, the children of Adam and Eve, which are Cain and Abel. And again, Cain is an allegory for the left hemisphere of the brain, those that live without the mother and without the father, and are ruled over by a selfish, greedy, violent ego. And then there's the right hemisphere of the brain, which are the children of Abel. To be able is to do God's will, and that is to be humbled, the penitent man before God, and that is through the brain. So these are just allegories, but they really tie in so in Mein Kampf, Hitler talked about these Zionist Jews, and the platform of the Zionist Jew was ostensibly what most people think is just the reunification of getting the Jewish people back into the Holy Land. But what is really important to note is that that story comes from the Old Testament of the Bible. And stories in the Old Testament are allegories. And again, if that offends some of you, that's your choice. But the reality is, as the Bible tells us again and again and again, that Jesus never spoke, but in a parable. The Bible is a series of allegories. So again, the children of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, they didn't exist. They're metaphors for the left and right hemisphere of the brain. Abraham and Sarah are metaphors. They're showing you that even at a greater age, to be completely desolate of life, the immaculate conception, the immaculate gift of rebirth can occur, and you can have Isaac, Yitzhak, joy, happiness in your life by turning to the right, by connecting to God's creation. These are all allegories, and so the play out from the Bible in our human history really, and I want you to really, really wrap your heads around this, everyone. And I'm sure that Santos and Josh both know this and are on side with this as well. But you can essentially separate the history of the earth between two groups. And once again, they literally represent the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So these two groups, and they are front and center in this story about World War I, World War II, and Adolf Hitler's Germany. And they are the Aryans and the Semites. Now, these are not my words. What I'm about to share with you comes from the ancient historical writings and the etymology from Sanskrit of the words Aryan and Semite. And Aryan is one who is righteous and one who is humble before God, a penitent man, and one who seeks to serve God and God's creation. That's what an Aryan is. It is not any kind of genetic makeup or makeover. It has nothing to do with one's genes. It's a choice, as all life is a choice. The opposite of them, and it literally talks about this when you go back to the very, very basis of what a Semite is. A Semite is described as the opposite of an Aryan. It is one who is apart from God, one who resides typically out of lust or greed or violence, and that they are atypical to the Aryan man. So what we have here, and I just want to tie this together, and then I'm going to pass it back over to Santos, but I just want to tie this together for you. So going from the Bible and the Old Testament, and the children of Adam and Eve, you have Cain and Abel. Cain, violent, greedy of the left brain, able to do humble, penitent before God of the right brain. Canaanites of Cain are the Semites. The children of Abel in the east, humble and penitent before God, are the Aryans. And our entire human history is a battle between these two particular groups, the Aryans and the Semites. And that's what you're seeing. They sometimes go under different names, but it's always these two particular groups. And once again, these are people who made choices in their life. These are choices. These are not, has nothing to do with one's genes. It has everything to do with the choices you make in your life. And the sound you're hearing is Santos regaining his connection back. So, Santos, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. I just got back.
Perfect. So did you hear all of that or some of that about the understanding and of human history between the Aryans and the Semites, the Canaanites and the children of Abel? Did you hear all of that or some of that?
Yeah, I got the first part, and then chopped off about 3 minutes ago. But what I got was the war of the twins, or the war of races. So these Semites, they're actually from the Atlantean fourth root race, whereas the Aryan race began 1 million years ago, and we're all basically Aryans, Italians, Nordics, Indians, Persians, Mayans, and there was also a third sub-root race, Semitic Arabic. So this is a different lot altogether. These are the Phoenicians of a different kind. They're not the lot that come from the Aryan root race, the third sub-race. They are from the Atlantean fourth root race. We are the fifth. And so this was what the Tartarian Empire was all about. It was destroyed as these people gained the upper hand and their murderous intentions over the peaceful Tartarians, who have always been trying to, for hundreds of years, defend their empire.
Yeah, this is absolute truth. And again, you might be surprised to hear this, but it's important that you hear this, and it's important that you know that the roots of what we're talking with regard to World War I and World War II and Adolf Hitler's Germany, they do come from these timelines that Santos is talking about. And it's so important that you understand this. It's so important that you wrap your heads towards this. Out between, let's say, when Hitler was asked to shepherd in this minority, this temporary government in late 32 in Germany until 1945. This is the same story that has been playing out for many, many, many thousands of years in human history between these two groups. We're only being born and caught up into this sort of ancient drama, this ancient saga between these two groups. Did you on with that?
Yep, it's the same. It's panning up now. It's the the world again, as they did, and Hitler, the international democrats. That's what he was calling them in all of his speeches, the internationalists. And he was calling them and derogatorily speaking about democracy. Because it's demon crazy. And they are the same people like your Pelosi's, your Fauci, Barack Obama. These are absolute, complete degenerates who want nothing but to murder and pillage and conquer and rule and control. These are adrenochrome-addicted, degenerate demons. And they come from a resurrected bad line from Atlantis that has been resurrected as a demon to afflict persecution on the Aryans. And that's what they've been doing since, especially the 12th century, when the Crusades began with the Templars, then they morphed into the Jesuits, and they changed the name into an Inquisition, but it's the same thing. And so if you look at Wikipedia under the word Inquisition, in the third paragraph, it'll tell you that they changed the name of the Inquisition in 1965, 2 years after I was born, to the Congregation of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. That is who is the people who won the Second World War. It was the communist, Bolshevik, demonic entities who, if you really want to tell the true story of the Second World War and the First World War, let's discuss the over 100 million Russians that were murdered by these Wall Street entities who funded the Bolshevik massacre of the Russian people and tried to do the same to Germany, but were essentially stopped in World War I. And World War II was to finish that off and get the Bolsheviks all the way into Europe, and then to start to propagandize their death cult to the rest of the world. And that's who Barack Obama is, Pelosi, and all those creeps. They're degenerates, they're demons, they're vampires, cannibals. They want to vaccinate our children, the most vulnerable, to murder them. They polluted Berlin and Germany in the 30s when after in 1933, March the 24th, my birthday, was the day that Jewry declared war against Hitler's evil empire. And that was the 6 golden years that they had up until 39. And despite that war, they still succeeded, and they still developed and became the most glorious, happy days that Germany has ever witnessed in all of their history, simply because Hitler nationalised the banks and kicked out the Rothschilds. So why are all these amazing positive things being done, and then on the other hand, people find ways of, like they did with Gaddafi, to paint the individual just one-sided and there's no discussion. So thank God for the internet and the revisionist history who have risked their lives, and the little old grannies who go to jail for saying anything nice about the days of Germany prior to the World War II and Hitler's regime. They're in jail. You can't talk about it. You can't find any more videos online about it anymore. You can't find the greatest story never told. You can't find Europa anymore. It's all gone.
Yeah, it truly is. You have to look at some of the other platforms, and of course, it's the same thing with the show today and the follow-up shows on it. They are going to have to find a home outside of the mainstream, outside of YouTube, because they simply, in fact, I received a cryptic message in a couple of days ago, essentially saying that if I did attempt to post the show today, in particular with Santos and Josh X being a part of it, that they were going to take down the entire Freak Sense TV channel. So Library TV, just so that everybody knows, has graciously agreed to allow a permanent home for this video, and there it will be as a record for everyone. But again, what Santos says is just so important for everyone to understand, that you can always tell who rules over you by the things you're not allowed to discuss, not allowed to talk about. And if we truly live in a democracy, again, these are just fake words designed to placate your ego and give you the illusion that you're free. You're not. A free society is entirely that. There's no such thing as borders. All you have to do is go up an airplane. There's no such thing as a border. But of course, these demonic souls that Santos is talking about, they've put fake borders up everywhere, and they've created a fake history everywhere. And remember, their fake history, don't you even question it, because if you do, there are 300 others as part of their peer review system to squash you and to support one another. And again, that's what lies require. The lie requires an army, and the truth requires nothing, because it is the truth, and it is the truth in every moment, and it connects all things. And when you begin to research this, folks, it answers all these nagging questions. And even just in terms of how the battle played out from 39 to 45 and the great delay, what they called the phony war after the original Blitzkrieg, and until May of 1940, that period of time known as the phony war. Why did nothing happen? could do a little research, because Adolf Hitler worked with France, worked with Great Britain, and put out private letters internationally for everyone to see that he wanted no part of this war. Struck quickly to simply show that they were ready, but they were willing to hand everything back over that wasn't original German land, and signed long-term agreements. And remember this, folks, okay? If Adolf Hitler is just such a horrible person, this is easily proved everywhere. I mean, because it's true. It's everywhere. You search this and you will find this. Hitler said in open letters to any international publication that would print them, he said that the Germans will completely disarm if the other nations agree to as well. So that's not a warmongering madman. That is a higher mind. And what you need to understand is that Hitler and the nation that he put together in Germany was a goodly, godly, righteous nation of Aryans, and that they were attacked without any one particular nation, because these demons, they don't reside in any one particular nation. Of course, out of World War II came Israel, and now they do. Now, that comment has nothing to do with all of the beautiful individuals that are living in Israel today. They're as much victims to the demons that rule over them as these very same demons that rule over us. What we're talking about, and what Hitler was talking about, is a tiny group. Are you piecing these comments together here? This is what Santos teaches. This is what I have shared with you time and again. It's what Josh knows as well. And that is that constantly, when you do research into any era of human history, it always comes back that it's the same group of people under a different name, and that it's a tiny, tiny group of families. It's a tiny, tiny group that controls all of this evil power. And this is that age-old battle between good and evil. It truly, truly, truly is. So in this regard, yes, what we are talking about is God and the devil. And now, if you're struggling with any of this, you need, let's go here, and then I'll bring Santos back into this, because I know that this will resonate with him as well. Like things like the philosophy of Tai Chi. You've been lied to into this belief that Tai Chi is a martial art. It now is Tai Chi Chuan, but Tai Chi is a philosophy of life. National Socialism, as created by Adolf Hitler, is a philosophy of life. It is not a political economic statement. It is a philosophy of life. It is an all-encompassing philosophy. And, believe it or not, very much like Tai Chi, Hitler's philosophy of National Socialism was all about God, and it was all about humility, penitence towards God. It was all about breathing. It was about qigong. It was about yoga. It was about exercise. Hitler created a nation of people that excelled in connecting to the mother. Now, where else does that exist? Anywhere, any country, anywhere. The mother has been squashed down deep beneath the surface of the soil now, and is deep down within us. In the superhighway of the chakras, the mother has been shoved down into the Muladhara. So this plays itself out so beautifully within and without. Where does anything that resembles Hitler's National Socialist Germany existing ever since that day? And it doesn't. It doesn't, because it's not allowed to exist, because it is the anathema. It is the death toll to these, as Santos was calling them, the international communists. These are they're not beholden to any one ideology. Remember, they invented the whole crap about communism and socialism. They're the same people that created capitalism. Remember, all communism and capitalism do is take you from one extreme to the other. Just they look different, but the same is going to occur. If you play the game of communism or advanced socialism or capitalism, you're going to end up bankrupt. It's just how the system works, because that is the goal of the system. How Hitler described National Socialism was in the middle ground, the middle way of the Buddha, the green shift path of the middle way. And this is what you see in all of his policy. So the idea of National Socialism is not a political statement, is not an economic policy. It is all-encompassing. And I'm going to pass it back over to Santos now and get him to run with that as well, because it is a holistic approach. And the thing that Colleen and I were talking about a few nights ago is that it's syncretism. It truly is. If you look at everything, and we're going to go into all of this today on the show, if you look at everything that Hitler put in motion in his Germany, it's Santos' syncretism. It is completely syncretic. So let's go back over to Santos to extend that.
Yeah, not only industrially and militarily was he protecting his nation. That's what nationals do, whereas internationals, they don't care about nations. They don't care about communities. They make everything, try to make it as homogenous as possible, and they want to dilute people's strong virtues of every nation. Whereas Hitler spoke a lot about how he wanted to protect his people from these influences, these nasty, diluting influences who were penetrating Germany to weaken its morale because of the great Tartarian spirit that it had, same as Russia. So with diet, he banned all those abattoirs which were cruelly murdering animals and torturing them by their cruel methods, etc. So they were shut down, and people's consciousness was being brought to a new level. They were becoming aware of these things and how bad industry can be when they don't bring ethics into it and things like that. So it wasn't just education, industry, it was health. Every area of the German people's lives were advanced, heavily. See the parades they used to have, by the buildings, the culture they had. It was definitely the richest. This is why Kaiser Wilhelm had to go, King George's cousin, and Tsar Nicholas, because they wanted, the Jesuits wanted their empire to be Anglo-Saxon, as in terms of America and the US, the American military and the English London-based economical structure. So, that was a rival. Germany was going to do deals with Iraq for oil pipelines, and
that's right.
Because Germany was doing everything right. They were using good technology, and their model was actually based on the old Republican American model by what's his name, in the late 1800s. He adopted the Russian and American. Russia and America was just prosperous. They had to be destroyed because in 1812, when the Rothschilds tried to convene a new world order back then, the Romanov dynasty of Russia were the only ones to have a spine and cojones to say no, and then, of course, Nathan Rothschild promised that he would take his vengeance on Russia one day. And so that's who it was. It was the Rothschilds that got in there and destroyed and stole all the wealth. But essentially, Germany was was using the model of the Russians and the Americans. So I'm going to try and find the name of that guy. He was very significant in history, in Germany's history too. So I'll do that while you...
Okay, and thank you for all of that, Santos. Now, folks, what I'm going to do is bring you up to speed in terms of how Hitler very quickly came to power. And this is very important because what you're about to hear is probably not something that you know, but this is the truth. So let's go to World War I. Is it possible that any one nation was responsible for the start of the outbreak of World War I? Who was it? What was that nation? I mean, the event, the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This is all just fluff for the press. These are colorful little lies. These little things that people talk about. It's just the truth of the matter when you go to try and research in terms of what the heck happened. How did World War I actually start? Like, how did it start if was really angry with one another? Then what you see is that there was this complex system of alliances. And as soon as you see a complex system of these hard and fast agreements between pacts, nations, but this is the Phoenicians. These are the cabal. We're just, the Phoenicians are the cabal that rule over us. So every time you see this, this is this nefarious group hidden away in these small families that are ruling unseen through the different so-called democratically elected parliamentary governments of the free Western world. It just isn't the case. There is no freedom. The freedom that did exist was Hitler's Germany, and that's why it was eradicated. So the World War I, the more you try and pin it down, you can't. And that's because the cause of World War I is by this hidden group. And it was nowhere and it was everywhere at the same time. And so you just had this event occur, and then all of these protocols from these various pacts kicked in, and then all of a sudden the Axis powers found themselves against the so-called Allied powers, and boom, there's a war. And here's what you need to understand. This was designed, of course, to destabilize the beautiful flowering of the Tartarian world that existed prior to the 20th century. And what the Tartarians, of course, built, which is the same thing that happened in Hitler's Germany, was that family was everything. And that when you look at it, family continues to grow and grow and grow. So family is not just your individual family, but it's your friends and your colleagues at work and whatnot. And then it's your community, and then it's your area, and then it's your country, and then it's your region, and then it's your continent, and then it's the whole world. And that's the Aryan philosophy. It's the whole world. We're all one. We all share. We all work together. And this is what had to be taken out. And this was the purpose for World War I and World War II. Destabilize the beautiful, goodly, godly cultures that were put into place via the Tartarian rule, which was just so beautiful. So nobody really knows how it started, and it got out of hand in a hurry. So this is the first time that you had the meeting of large armies with these new modern weapons that could kill multiple people in a small geographic space. And so very shortly you had horrific amounts of death. So fast forward, 1916, this is the truth. This is not my opinion. You need to do your research, and you can verify this easily by just going and doing this, listening carefully. In 1916, after essentially what just became the sort of the de facto end to the Battle of the Somme with the German victory, because the German U-boats had effectively cut off the British supply to their troops, and the British troops were getting slaughtered in the trenches in France, and their will was breaking. The French army mutinied. 600,000. The flower of France's soul. These beautiful young children that were forced into this ridiculous, nonsensical, no purposeful war. 600,000 French boys were murdered, destroyed from 1914 to 1916. So just under 2 years, 600,000. The French troops, they walked away. The British soldiers didn't have the supplies, and the Germans who were supplied and who didn't back off kind of de facto won the First World War. This is what you don't know, and you need to know that by the end of, as a matter of course, by the end of 1916, Germany won World War I. And by the end of 16, these negotiations for a settlement between the Germans and these Allied powers was being done, was being written out, was being worked upon to be settled. Now, Adolf Hitler, who won, the Iron Cross, First Class, Iron Cross, Second Class, the Military Cross, had on top of those three, had 6 other awards for bravery, constantly took on the most dangerous positions, including runners, from the back of the lines to the front of the lines. He took on the most dangerous jobs because he was passionate about the safekeeping of the flowering of the German people. And so he was very passionate about this, and well liked by his fellow soldiers within the German army that was in France. Very well liked because he was so positive, so passionate, and as a very strong leader as well. So Hitler was well aware that by late 1916 there was this hold. He was wondering why, what's going on. When he asked his superior officers, they told him because articles were being drawn up for the end of the war, that the Germans had won. And so nothing happened. The Germans didn't pull back their soldiers. They started giving them leave out of the trenches, but they didn't pull back. But everyone was just waiting for these agreements to be completed. That's what was being done. Then you need to know this. The Rothschilds, in particular, reached out to the British government and said, we want you to stop working on a settlement proposal, a peace proposal for the end of this war, and instead what we want you to do is accept this deal that we're offering to you. And this became the Balfour Declaration in early 1917, and you need to know this. What the cabal, what the Phoenicians via the Rothschilds offered to the British government and therefore the French governments was that they would infuse massive amounts of money to get their war machine going again. And secondly, that they needed a new force because the French and the British kids were just utterly decimated and destroyed. And so that meant the Americans, they guaranteed, so this is America at the time that was isolationist, had no interest in really what was even going on in World War II, and yet they guaranteed that the Americans would enter the war, and guaranteed that the soldiers in the trenches in France would receive all the armaments necessary to continue the war. What they asked for in return essentially was twofold. One was policy making power with the national parliamentary governments in Britain and France, and secondly, they wanted the turnover of the Holy Land into the possession of the Zionist Jews, so that they could recreate this, mythical, ancient reality of the Jews in the Holy Land, which again is just an allegory in the Bible. And very quickly to touch upon that again, remember, the only historical reference for what a Jew is comes from the Old Testament of the Bible. A Jew in the Old Testament of the Bible is one who seeks for God actively by going within. Thus, via meditation, one seeks for the land of milk and honey, the promised land, for all those who seek God, and that is the land that is eternally flowing with abundant milk and honey. So there is nowhere to be found anywhere. Now, of course, they've written books, and those books are now protected by peer review, but they're all bullshit lies, excuse the language, but it is true. They're just lies. These books saying or trying to provide this historical proof for an actual genetic race of Jews. There's not. Jews, like Aryans, are people of all the different nations. It is a choice. It is a choice to connect to God via the right hemisphere of the brain, or it is to be devoid of God by being ruled over by your ego in the left hemisphere of the brain. I mean, it really is that simple. And so that's the backstory of what was coming there. But in 1916, the war was over, and a young Adolf Hitler was waiting for the terms to be released and everyone to go home, and the war was over. And then it wasn't over, because the Balfour Declaration, which was signed in 1917, then kick-started the war again. And how that happened was getting the Americans into the war, and very, very, very quickly. The Lusitania. Who thought that was a good idea to load up a luxury cruise liner and take it through World War I waters infested with frigates and battleships and German U-boats? It was a good idea to fill that up with innocent civilians from a independent country, and just take it right through the war-torn waters of the North Sea. Well, that, of course, was the cabal. And so the Rothschilds set about to do this. And through the operatives in New York, what they did is they advertised, and you can still find these ads. You can find articles written about this. And what they did is they made, they drew in the working middle class of America onto the Lusitania by taking these first-class berths, all-you-can-eat and luxury rooms on this, luxury liner, the Lusitania, and they offered them for such little fares that the ship sold out in very, very short order. And when the German ambassador in New York to the United States heard of this and saw this, he took out an entire page ad in a variety of newspapers, including the New York Times, and put a warning saying that it is lunacy, it is insanity to take a cruise liner through the war-torn waters of the North Sea and expect it to be kept safe. The U-boats are not able, in the midst of battle, you're not able to tell what is legitimately a cruise liner and what is subterfuge or what is an enemy vessel. And they just said, the Germans said that if you attempt to do this, we cannot guarantee safe passage, and you should not do this. Do not go on this vessel. This voyage should be canceled. And of course, it wasn't because they were using this as a means to get them into the war. So again, what happened? Of course, the Lusitania gets attacked. Now, everyone in history blames it on a U-boat attack. It wasn't. This was an actual British military frigate that was waiting for it, and then trailed it into these part of the North Sea that they felt, or the part of the Atlantic that they felt was under German control and was prowling with the German U-boats, so they could blame it on the German U-boats, and then they destroyed the Lusitania, and you basically know the story of what happened. And from there, the Zionists, again, you just need to understand this whole narrative about World War II, about Jews, these evil Jews, and Hitler hating the Jews. We're talking about the Phoenicians. We're talking about the Canaanites of the left brain, kicked out of the Holy Land. They go by different names. It serves a purpose to create a rallying point, which was in these Zionist Jews who were seeking a home once again for a Holy Land, once again for the international Jew in the Holy Land. So again, you just have to be so careful about this never-ending lie. But this is the same cabal that rules over us. So the ship was sunk, and then the newspapers went to work, and then the whole mainstream media and the American government went to work as well on the American people, and then the lies just were pushed, and eventually America did come into the war. Now, at the end of World War I, what led to the end of World War I? Again, they're just the same way in which Germany won in 1960 is kind of how the Allies supposedly won at the end of World War I. There was no one definitive battle. There was no one who actually had a decisive victory. What happened, as Santos was talking about, was the takedown of the German, the son of Wilhelm I, Wilhelm II, was the Rothschilds going in and getting rid of the German monarch, Wilhelm II, and replacing it with a coalition parliamentary-based government that was filled with their operatives. And of course, the whole purpose was to grind the German war machine to a halt. So again, Germany did not lose World War I, and the Americans coming into the war did not win World War I for Britain and France. You just need to know this stuff. At a certain point, the German war machine just kind of stopped, because from behind the scenes, this new coalition, secretly Zionist-controlled coalition parliamentary-style government in Germany ground their own country's war machine to a halt. Then a treaty is signed, and we're going to get back over to Santos here with this, but you just need to understand this is so very, 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 very important. The Treaty of Versailles was designed to create World War II. The Treaty of Versailles was designed to destroy the family in Europe. It was designed to destroy goodly, godly, moral values. And this is what the Treaty of Versailles did. The terms applied to Germany were so ridiculous, were so horrific, and of course should never have been signed and agreed. It's not legal anyways, but this is what happened because they controlled the nefarious government that took power. So the terms were so ridiculous that it would take this once proud, relatively new nation of Germany and turn it into a cesspool. And that's what it became. And we're going to bring Santos back in here now to talk all about this. But by the time Hitler came back and came into Berlin, Berlin had fallen to the cesspool city of the entire world. And this isn't the fault of the German people. This is the work of these international banksters, these international communists. And we're going to pass it back over to Santos. Did you find that information, my friend? And I want you to continue this narrative now.
Yeah, it was Otto von Bismarck who implemented Republican Americans' ethic, free market business model, and Germany was just leading the world. Everywhere, Germany was just outshining the world. So it wasn't in the plans of the Jesuits to have it that way, and so they tried to stop Germany in their tracks because Germany wanted to continue advancing the Tartarian model of freedom and free market and prosperity, and science, whereas in the West they were earnestly trying to bring scientism into the world and the electrical grid and paying for petrol and oil and all of this. So that's why they attacked those three nations, and America has now been diluted as well in the same manner. You've got all kinds of degenerate practices going on. For instance, abortion right up until the baby is born and breathes. You can abort it. I mean, that's just murder.
Incredible. It is.
That's out and out murder. They flaunt the cannibal adrenochrome diet in Hollywood, and they do it as though, you know, with a smirk on their face, as though, wow, we can just murder your babies and eat them, and we've got all the clout and power and influence over the brainwashed masses. And so in this world, you know, anything can be spun as truth, and it's very, very important to keep an open mind and penetrate when you're doing your research. And you'll discover this. That's what I did. I discovered it and realised that the people who really won that war were not the National Socialists, but they were the people who then came to be called the Nazis, because Nazi is a derogatory expression used against the National Socialists, and it was not anything that Hitler used at all. They would never use that term, but it's communism, and that's what they did. They inverted that and made Germany look like it was the evil one, same as the model I'll use again, you know, Gaddafi. I remember they did the same with Saddam Hussein. And all of these leaders that they want out, they did that with in Pinochet's time, down there in Chile, in Argentina. The current Jesuit was there murdering people. It's always the Jesuits and the Freemasons. They are a clique of sodomites. They abuse little children, they murder them, they sacrifice them, and they are the ones who won, the murderers. And the proof's in the pudding. They went all out on Germany and carpet bombed all the cities, just like they did in Tokyo as well.
Yep.
And massacred millions of civilians needlessly, and abandoned many of the Cossack warriors who tried to help Germany with Hitler against the Red Army. They supported the White Army as well, and they were betrayed and murdered en masse by orders of the American Jesuit military. And so, very clever coup by the Jesuits. They even infiltrated Germany, like on a very, very high level. Hitler always said that Himmler betrayed him, and he was known to be a Jesuit. You know, Himmler was put in there, I believe. So that's what they did. There was a great movie that the French made against the Freemasons who took over the world after World War II. So they had their day. They massacred Mussolini as well, butchered him, raped him and his family, as an example. I mean, a good victor does not do that. A good victor is fair, loving, and just wants the good for everyone, the masses. They don't go taking their revenge. Justice, like in in the court system or a process, is appropriate. But they acted that out. They had all the power, and they took their vengeance on the free world. And ever since World War II, we've been living under a Freemason totalitarian dictatorship, and now they're doing the same to the free world as they did back then.
Yeah, it's the same game plan, with just different faces, and this is how it plays out again and again and again. And again, what do you see in every single country? Immorality, the destruction of the family, the brutalization, rape, murder, torture of the sacred feminine, so that the sacred feminine is non-existent, and so that all that's left is the phallic, symbol of the male, thrusting and thrusting for everything that it wants, everywhere that it wants, and it's absolutely disgusting. And we've all had enough. And the reason that this is just so important, this podcast today, is because this was the first grounds of what is happening right now, and it all played out against Hitler's Germany in the middle of Europe. And again, Santos always talks about this, that ultimately, and he's absolutely right, ultimately good will always win, because evil will always spite itself no matter what, because, of course, evil is the opposite of God's creation. What exists is God's creation. What God's creation is goodly and godly. There's nothing evil. Even the temporal transverse ways of electricity, yes, they limit us. Yes, it can be metered, and yes, it runs out and you have to ask for more, and all of these different things. But it's not evil. It's how you use it. And you don't have to use it. It's the same thing with oil and gas. They're made of the earth, so we don't have to worry about polluting the earth because we didn't make it. It comes of the earth. So it's just that God always gives us infinite choices and infinite possibilities. So what are we doing? What are we doing with all of this supposed technology? Are we seemingly using the bottom of the barrel type fuels and technologies? We're always the bottom of the barrel, always, instead of high. And that's the whole point and purpose behind this, because it's designed to keep us down the superhighway. Because believe, don't kid yourselves, that's why Hitler was tied to this. That's why it is the swastika, and we're going to get into this today, because that's the journey up the chakras, the houses of the sun. Shak, house, Ra, sun houses within you. And the whole purpose of the chakras is to ascend up into that third eye chakra, where you're going to allow the swastika to spin around in a clockwise direction, constantly reaching up to heaven and being filled eternally. The cup runneth over with the gifts of God, and then the top of the head opens up, the purple crown is revealed, and we live in eternal bliss, always. No pleasure and pain, just consistent bliss by turning ourselves to the right path, the right way, which is righteousness of God and God's creation. That's why the swastika was used. So now back to what Santos brought up earlier about this term Nazi. Again, it's staggering how many people don't know this. The Germans, National Socialists, never called themselves Nazis. They weren't Nazis. They were National Socialists. And again, socialist is not socialism. National is that the individual, which was to be exalted, was going to serve God's creation by helping others. That's what Hitler said. The highest reward, the highest creation that a German citizen could do would be to take their individual brilliance and help others. Wow, how evil is that? It's not evil at all. That's just purely beautiful. And that, of course, is righteous. That's what was exalted. That's National Socialism, social to be social, because it's in a social, combined social setting. So it's the individual recognizing that they would remain an individual, but share their genius and their brilliance with others. And then that's what you saw Germany do. They reached out to any nation around them that wanted help, that wanted their support. They were willing to help. They were willing to share. That's a narrative that's never talked about, but it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. So the term Nazi comes from a gentleman named Conrad Hayden. And Conrad Hayden is just one of these minions for the Phoenicians, going under the title of a Zionist Jew. Oh, these big evil Zionist Jews. So the term Nazi comes from the sort of Austrian word. It's like a Austrian Bavarian sort of a slang word, and it's called Ignaz. And to call someone an Ignaz is like you're stupid, a simpleton, a country bumpkin is kind of the term Ignaz. And so Nazi is just a play upon Ignaz. So it is this sick, degenerate, adrenochrome-taking minion of the Phoenicians, Conrad Hayden, coming up with this name Nazi. Okay? So every time you use that name, you're supporting the killers of babies, the drinkers of the adrenochrome from babies. This is what you're supporting. So if you want to continue to do that, have at it. But at least now you know the cognitive dissonance that's inside of you, you know the reasons for it. Because everything you've been taught to do is wrong. Everything you should be doing, you know, if you just cleaned yourself up inside and allowed that kundalini to magnetic energy to flow inside of you, all the truth from God will just resonate within you. You'll know. You just know. You won't have to read a book. You'll just know. It's called intuition. It's called telepathy. You'll know these things by becoming righteous. Get out of your brain. So this term is a false term created by this fake group called the International Zionists or the Zionist Jews. It's just the Phoenicians. It's the Cabal. It's the same people today. So when they took the Kaiser out of power and then this new parliamentary form of government was put into place, the German war machine just kind of collapsed, and that's how the war ended. And then this ridiculous Treaty of Versailles, and it was designed to just destroy, to allow Germany, and then it was just going to spread, so the whole of Europe would just become a den of sin. And that's what Berlin became, and that was going to spread through the whole rest of Germany. It did in great part in Munich as well. So that's what this was all about. So by the time that Hitler comes back and begins to find a purpose in life again, he goes to Berlin and he just sees that this is sickness beyond description. And what you saw for the first time, everything that we're suffering from today was started in Berlin after World War I. So all of this lesbianism was just pushed and pushed. It was the lesbian capital of the world. And all of these plays that were done live on stage was man on man, and especially woman on woman. And then it was just orgies, and then downstairs underneath all of these theaters, they had places where people could just go and partake in all of this mixed sex orgies and whatnot. Drugs were absolutely rampant. Now, you know what gets lost in all of this, by the way, was a massive problem with pedophilia. And one of the worst things that Hitler saw and was so outraged by was this massive amount of underage female prostitutes, young girls. And these girls were basically being driven around in these luxury cars. So all the person had to do was make a request, and then the girls were actually literally, these little girls were actually driven to the homes of these degenerates. And this was rampant, so therefore crime was rampant. And so therefore these crime families and organized crime began to be rampant. And this is what Hitler saw, and this is what led him to. So from a political standpoint, if you want to know the political ideology behind National Socialism, Hitler was just saying it is the exact opposite of both capitalism on the right and communism on the left. Because he said it's a different looking devil, but it's ultimately the same devil. And so in the middle was to in an economic nation is the worker. And so in Hitler's Germany, Germany, you have this exaltation of the worker. Now, let's go through, and Santos can chime in at any point here that he wishes. Just for the listeners to know, Josh has dropped out of the call about 40 minutes ago, and we haven't seen Josh back yet. So just so you know. So here's once Hitler took power, there's a whole, just in short order, all of this miraculous changes occurred. Now, folks, you've been told lies about how Hitler took this supreme power, because, again, when Hindenburg asked him to form the head of this very tentative coalition government, minority government in the German parliamentary system, Hitler wasn't going to last, it was probably going to last weeks, not even months. It was just so ridiculous. There were so many different parties. Nothing was going to happen. And then what people do is that they blame the Reichstag fire in early 1933 on Hitler and Hitler's minions, and that just isn't the case. The people that actually did it are, once again, these operatives of the so-called international Zionist Jews, or the international bankers. But again, this is just the cabal. It's just the Phoenicians. It's the same group that's ruling over us today. This whole thing about the Jew is just a ploy, and it's just necessary to create this hatred for goodliness and godliness. So we'll get into that more. So when that occurred, that's when Hitler turned on a dime, because those of the right brain can turn on the dime left brain quickly, and Hitler saw his moment, and he seized that moment. And what he did is he took absolute power. And what doesn't get talked about is that Hitler issued a speech to the German citizens, and he said, "Give me these 4 years, please." He said, "Give me these 4 years, and if you wish at the end of these 4 years, will absolutely step away. But in 4 years, I can save us from the sickness of what is plaguing us." So that is the truth of what happened. This great, coup that, and the great night of the shadows where Hitler took part. No, it's just very much what's happening right now with the Trump government riding out this incredible plan to save us on the backs of the coronavirus. It's very, very, very much the same. We're going to get into this at the end of the show. The parallels are overwhelming. So that was the scenario. And so what Hitler did is he set about to, in very short order, fix things and to protect this new fledgling German government. So that's why you did see, a lot of military force in and around Hitler. But it wasn't against anything to do with the German people. This was against what the cabal would do to take Hitler out. And that's why he had to act fast. And you need to wrap your heads around this. This is not some lazy explanation to apologize for what Hitler did. If he didn't act fast, and remember, parliamentary government isn't designed to work. It doesn't work. It's designed to filibuster. It's designed so that nothing gets done. That all you do is have election. Then it's, you're into the third year, and by the third year now you're just starting to run for election again. And nothing happens in these governments. Nothing happens in this system where it's just election after election after election. Nothing ever happens except people protecting their backsides so they can get reelected. What Hitler did was clear the road for massive changes, and that's what happened, and that's why you see the German nation exalt itself to the heights of which, because we don't know what our real history looks like, but I'm sure it was what the Tartarian world looked like. But in terms of what we know to exist, we've never seen anything like it, and it happened unbelievably fast. So what I want you to know is that in these early days of 1933, March of 1933, Hitler had nothing doing with attacking Jews or running down Jews or any of this kind of nonsense. He was desperately trying to secure this new fledgling government, and he was desperately trying to take back the sickness. So what was the sickness? At the time, there were 6 million unemployed Germans. That figure, folks, there's never been a larger figure in any European country since. That you just can't imagine how many people out of those eligible to be workers, what that was like. That was past a third of the eligible people to be working out of work. Inflation was out of hand. It was literally something like millions of Deutsche Marks for a loaf of bread. People wheelbarrowing their money down the road to buy a loaf of bread. This is sick. People who are goodly, godly, and righteous don't do this to one another. There's no reason for that to occur. This is only occurring because, of course, Germany was a victim of this debt-based money and the Federal Reserve banking cabal. So they're a victim like everybody else, and they were being squeezed into the ground. So very, 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 very quickly, Hitler begins to act to protect this new government and make changes. Now, in March of 33, Konrad Heiden comes up with the name Nazi, and then everyone around the world, including political leaders like who once was in charge of the British Admiralty, Winston Churchill, making these incredible comments about the evil of Germany and the evil of Hitler, and he hadn't done anything. Wrap your heads around that one. Nothing had occurred to this point. Nothing. So if you think some horrible things were about to happen, which didn't, but they didn't happen. Even your little system of believing in these lies didn't happen. So what did international Jewry, this is what their words, is what they're calling it, international Zionistic Jewish councils and cabals were called. They called an out-and-out holy war on Adolf Hitler's people so that not one man, woman, or child would be left standing. Now, wrap your heads around this. How is this even possible? How is this possible unless this was a planned, made-up story and narrative by the sick cabal, the Phoenicians? How is this possible where Hitler is 3 months into this fledgling government and has just declared a state of national emergency and has taken essentially dictatorial power and is just in the beginning of taking steps to solidify his own power and to begin to make changes? How is it that the whole rest of the weight of this international world of so-called Jews is saying that Germany and Hitler are the worst people ever and that it's a holy war, and so that the entire nation of Germany has to be destroyed and has to be taken away? How is this possible? How is this possible that in March of 1933, they're saying these things? It's impossible. That's what I'm making the point. It's impossible. It's a made-up story that shows you that it is an absolute made-up story. It's not real. He hadn't done anything, and they're talking about no man, woman, or child left standing. That's ridiculous. That's sick. That's made up. Okay, so very, very shortly, what did Hitler do? One of the first things that he did is he got rid of, and just to bring you guys up to speed, that Santos is just continually getting his signals falling off. So he's going to try a couple more times, but we may not get Santos back either, okay? So sorry about that, folks. Very quickly, what did Hitler do? And we've only got half an hour left to cover so much stuff, it's unbelievable. But the very first thing that he did, he got international. So, out and out, outlawed it, and these people were forced out of Germany. Take your things and leave. They weren't put to concentration camps. They were just told to leave Germany. These are the bankers. Then he set about, with regard to the mainstream media, which 90% of Germany's mainstream media, of course in those days in the form of newspapers in particular, so what Hitler then did is that he forced out all of these international Zionist-controlled mainstream companies that had a stranglehold on all of the major newspapers, and they were replaced with German companies that were then producing the sort of honest truth or news about what was going on. Very, very similar, by the way, to what Donald Trump is positioning himself to do in America right now as well. So these are the first steps that he did. The next thing that Hitler did is he outlawed Freemasonry, and he shut down all Freemason temples so that they couldn't be meeting in secret. And then, now, here is a huge one, folks, and you just really, 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 really need to listen carefully here, because if what you're saying you think is so true about this Holocaust, and Hitler's whole plan all along was to eliminate race of Jews, then you cannot account for this, and this is the absolute truth. Things were ugly in 1933 in Germany as Hitler was making changes, because the cabal was desperately trying to take Hitler down and trying to stop what he was attempting to do. So there was an enormous amount of acts of terrorism and violence against Hitler's government in Germany and in other countries, such as the German ambassador to France, who was shot opening his door by this so-called, international Jew who killed him, and that led to the one night of, the night of breaking glass, where all the Jewish known shops were the windows were smashed. The windows were smashed and such. So these are all being caused because desperately, the cabal is trying not to allow Hitler's government. And believe me, they read the protocols, they read Mein Kampf, they saw that he was an Aryan, and that he was looking to create a nation of goodly godliness and to take their fake system out. So they were fully aware of what was a So 1933 was just insane with all of these acts of terrorism in Germany and outside of Germany against Hitler's government. So Hitler worked with the World Zionist Organization, and in later 1933, what Hitler did, and you need to know this, is the absolute truth. Hitler worked with them to say that what was best for everyone involved was to take the Jews out of Germany and give them safe passage to their dream of creating a rebirth of the Holy Land, in the Holy Land, a new nation, and to transport them to Lebanon and Palestine and the areas surrounding the Holy Land. So, and in particular, it was Palestine where this major organization of the International Zionists was encouraging all of these Jews to come and set up shop, and they were helping them to set up businesses, anticipating through the Balfour Act that they were going to create Israel. The world didn't know this yet. So from 1933 to 1941, and the only reason it stopped in 41 is because the war escalated to such a point that the Germans simply could not continue to do so. But from 1933 to 1941, Adolf Hitler transferred a total of $500 trillion of Jewish money from Germany and gave that money safe passage through this, I believe it was the Havala Company in Palestine for these German Jews. So they were given safe passage to the Holy Land, and then all of their assets, in most cases, were liquidated for them, and then the value of this, often in the form of purchasing German goods, which they could then sell for great profit because they were such well-made goods. In Palestine, this was done. So you had safe passage for any Jew. So if you are a German Jew and you're thinking, boy, this is kind of getting scary because I'm thinking that there's going to be a Holocaust and I'm thinking my life is in danger, why didn't these people leave? Why did the ones that stayed in there? There weren't necessarily tons of them, but there were German Jews that stayed. Why? Because they felt secured under Hitler's government. Remember, after the night of the broken glass, when this was in retaliation for the international Zionists shooting the German ambassador to France in the chest and killing him at his door, Goebbels and Hitler went national and very public and called for all Germans under penalty of imprisonment to stop any and all retaliation against Jewish people or businesses. And it stopped. There was only one night of it. And that was it. So if you're thinking that he's some sort of maniac and wants to kill all of these Jews, why did he do that? So the whole point in 33 was saying that this is not a good situation for these people to be here and offering them safe passage. And he followed through. He absolutely followed through. And there was $500 billion from 33 to 41 that went through German government control, where if they were evil, they could have taken that money, but they didn't, and it all went back to this Havala Corporation in Palestine in the Holy Land. So this is what happened. This is called the transfer agreement, okay? So this was the peaceful movement of all German Jews that wanted to go, to leave Germany and go and be part of the plan for a new land, promised land of milk and honey for the Jews in the region of the Holy Land. So that's what occurred. So how does that mix with homicidal maniac and concentration camps and liquidating 6 million Jews? It doesn't. Come on. This is common sense. And you just simply have probably never heard this, but this is the absolute truth. All you have to do is just do a modicum amount of your own research. The transfer agreement, 1933 to 1941. Any German Jew that wanted to go could take all of their wealth safely and go safely to Palestine. Okay? So that is disproving this evil plan that hated the individual Jew and wanted to exterminate the individual Jew. It didn't happen. It absolutely didn't happen. So, while this was going on, Hitler had to do something, and fast, with regard to the economy. So the very first thing that he did, as I said, was getting rid of the debt-based currency. And what he did in the beginning is he created these treasury notes. And all of the German gold, by the way, was stolen from Germany by the Treaty of Versailles. And it was written, the Treaty of Versailles, by the way, was written by the Dulles. So Allen Dulles, the CIA, and his brother basically ran Eisenhower's government for 8 years in America. The Dulles brothers are the Phoenician cabal. So these are the worst of the same people that are ruling us over today. They wrote the Treaty of Versailles. And all German gold was gone. So Hitler didn't have gold to back his currency. So you know what he did? This is brilliant. He created these new government treasury notes, and it was backed by an honest day's labor. So for an honest day's labor, you received a treasury note, which is guarantee of monetary wealth within the new nation of Germany. And it's backed upon a person's labor, which can't be taxed. Just obviously showing you, proving to you that, of course, it can't be taxed because it is the product of the individual, not the state. And so Hitler creates this brilliant concept of this new currency, which are just government treasury notes based upon an honest day's work. How grassroots is that? How commonsensical is that? It's genius because it's so simple and commonsensical. And this how the things began to change so quickly. So what then happened? Hitler said, our country is in shambles and we have to change things and fix things. And they needed to clean up Berlin and get rid of all of these mobsters and all of this immorality and decadence and all of the drugs and the criminal gangs. So large amounts of people were paid to help with fully populate the police forces and emergency forces, and they were there to round up and get rid of and punish these people that were doing these horrific things. That's when these so-called concentration camps were created. These concentration camps were simply the prisons of these people in Germany that simply refused to do the right thing, and they were taken away from society and they were put to work, which is the right thing to do. And so very quickly then with the rest of the German population, it was about rebuilding and modernizing Germany, and he just put them to work. And for all new families, created a $1,000, that's a lot of money, a $1,000 loan that didn't have to be repaid but for 10 years. So in 10 years, there's no interest. He outlawed usury. You can't have interest on principal. It's impossible. So this is a scam that creates a debt-based currency and forces everyone into bankruptcy. So he eliminated the debt-based currency, so he eliminated interest on monies. No interest. So all of these things that he was doing for the people, all they had to do was to repay, and Hitler always gave them massive amounts of time to repay, or ways that they didn't even have to repay. So with these new families, if the mother stayed home, and if they had $4,000 loan was void. They didn't have to pay back. And this happened time and time again, encouraging young families to occur, and families built upon a mother staying home and raising beautiful children. And then everything just began to expand at a blitzkrieg, a lightning rate within Germany, because he just simply gave these beautiful, wonderful people hope and put them to work and gave them real money and allowed them to spend it on things that they need. And it just constantly stimulated and re-stimulated the economy, and the economy was just growing at incredible rates. Now, what did Hitler do immediately for the workers? Well, Hitler told corporations that making a profit, there's nothing wrong with that, but that the workers had to come first, so that the first things that were established under Hitler's government were rules limiting the workday and the work week for Germans, and ensuring that they had paid vacations and that they had breaks during the day, not just for consumption of food, but for exercise. Exercise was such a huge thing in Germany's government. So all of these corporate companies of a certain size and above had to build literal gymnasiums, and some even put in swimming pools as well. And then they had lockers with everybody's name on it and locks for all of their possessions, so that during the course of the day, these workers were able to take a break from what they were doing and relax via exercise. And when David David Lloyd George, former Prime Minister of England, came to visit, and he was walked through all of this stuff. He just said, this is the most fantastic thing I've ever seen. He said, I've never seen a happier group and more productive group of people in my life. He said, everybody just wants to help everybody else because everyone is so happy. And he said that the German worker lived the life of like a rich and famous person in England. You had to be rich and famous to be able to have the things and do the things that a German worker had. Now, here's another couple of incredible things that are worth talking about. I know we're getting low on time, and we're just going to have to come back because of the losing Santos and Josh. So we're going to have to come back with parts 2 and parts 3. But these are so important to talk about. So one of the things that Hitler did with regard to the German workforce is that they needed houses, and these families needed to have houses, and they needed transportation. So he went to work, and in the first 3 years, of Hitler's government in National Socialist Germany, he built 1.5 million homes for workers and introductory families. And these homes, when I put this up, I'll have images for it. And you have to see these homes to believe them. You have to 2-story beautiful homes that were built so well and it just made you feel like you were important. And so these homes were priced so low that any German worker could afford them. And the repayment terms, again, no interest, were so generous that they were easily paid for within 5 to 10 years by the German workers. And again, there were so many different things that Hitler put into these things that, again, if they had a family, if the mother stayed home, they had a certain number of kids, then part of the cost of these homes was forgiven as well. And it just brilliant. So that is one aspect, was all of these houses. You had to get them into houses. They had to be okay. They needed transportation. Enter Henry Ford, one of many people from around the world that came to see the miracle that was happening in Germany. Henry Ford came to Germany, and he said to Adolf Hitler, I simply cannot believe what you have done here. And he said, if there's any way that I can help you, he said, I would offer my services for free to help you with what you're doing. This is so amazing. Remember, this is the same Henry Ford that has now been demonized by the cabal. And what did Henry Ford do? He wrote that book about the international Zionist Jews attempting to take over the world through communism and capitalism, and that they were the shadow government behind all of these governments. Yes, and now Henry Ford is evil in everybody's mind, because he exposed the Phoenicians and the cabal. So he reached out to Hitler in a big way, and they became such friends that in Hitler's principal office, behind his desk, was a life-size portrait of Henry Ford. That's how much Henry Ford eventually did do to help. Not only anything to do with cars or vehicles, which he did a lot, but with plants for advanced manufacturing and these automated lines and stuff. It was incredible, just incredible, because he was so taken by what Hitler was doing and had done in Germany. So Henry Ford helped Hitler create the Volkswagen. The Volkswagen, the people's car, the Wagen, car, Volks, people car. And this same car, again, you may not see it, but we live in Mexico. Mexico, Central America, South America, is these same Volkswagens that are being made in the early 1930s and beyond in Germany. They were such a brilliant vehicle. They are such a brilliant car. And what occurred is, as I say, is just absolutely a miracle. And these cars were priced for $995. And again, most Germans, if they simply followed basic things with regard to family, didn't even have to pay back the whole loans on owning these cars. So now you're finding German workers have their own car, a good car that worked and worked and worked, and a nice house that worked and worked and worked. Just incredible. Sorry about that. The internet connection just went down. Gary, can you hear me okay? Vanessa, can you hear me okay? Okay. Thanks, guys. So this is true. That was created in very short order. You had a nation of families raising children. During the first 3 years in Germany, there were 2,500 new churches that were built, and there was no particular denomination that was preferred over another. Hitler was a Catholic Christian, but the number one form of churchgoers in Germany were Protestants, and there were other types as well. That none were limited or restricted or picked upon or anything. So there was this great surgence of churches and a connection to God, because again, in protocols of National Socialism, I told you at the beginning that this was all about a holistic approach. It's like Tai Chi. So it's not just political, it's not just economic. It was very spiritual, and it was actually very, very, very well-based in the East. Philosophy is interesting. Hitler, a lot of people say that, he was a devout Catholic Christian. Well, for a devout Catholic Christian, he sure knew a lot about the Egyptian Book of the Dead and Egyptian religion. He knew a lot about Buddha. He knew a lot about Krishna, and it seems like he knew a lot about the real origin of the Christos and the Bible as well. So this is a very, very spiritual, highly athletic, and very, very thoughtful nation. So Hitler said that this nation goes through the workers. The worker has to be exalted, and they work. Corporations could make money, that's totally fine, but the workers had to come first. And workers were paid to go on vacations. And if you're thinking that Hitler's some evil guy and his people were terrified of him, he paid the workers to go out of Germany because he wanted the Germans to really fully appreciate what they were building and what they had in Germany. So he encouraged them to go elsewhere. And in fact, from 1934 on, Hitler created a liner that took German workers and their families to vacations on the Mediterranean Riviera, and all the way down into the Mediterranean. And they would go on these beautiful cruises. German workers, they were being paid to go on vacations out of the country, because if you have a happy people, if you have a happy nation, then you have happy children. Now, before we leave for today, the last thing we're going to have, obviously we're going to have parts 2 and parts 3, but I want to leave you with this one. This is, in my estimation, is extremely important. You've all heard of Hitler Youth and how important children were. Hitler called children a sacred gift from God. And so this is why that every time a child was born into a family, Hitler's government gave monetary bonuses to the family, because considered to be so special and so vital. So children had their own, of course, and they had the Hitler Youth had nothing to do with propaganda and genetic stuff. It was about empowering them, teaching them to become intelligent and strong and independent. So do you know what Hitler did? By the end of 1934, he had this in place. He created throughout Germany an entire hostile network and a footpath through the entire country. And here are all these 12 and 13 and 14-year-old kids going together in small groups, often without any adult supervision, and they were hiking Germany. And every single community they went to, there was a government-sponsored hostel, and they were beautiful. And everything was provided for no cost. Beautiful rooms, beautiful beds, and healthy foods. Hitler was a vegetarian. Hitler is the first person in history with his governments to protect animals, and we're going to get into all of this as well. So their schooling and education was teaching children to appreciate the importance of a vegetarian diet. He even taught protocols of a vegan diet as well. Animals were exalted. The German children in their educational systems were taught that animals were man's best friend, and that they needed to become part of their families, and they were protected. Vivisection was outlawed. It was a crime, or it was a crime punishable by 20 years in prison, I believe. This is serious stuff. Everywhere you turn with this nation and this man, you see the ability for German Jews to leave at any time they wanted to. Most didn't, because liked staying in Germany, because these were goodly, godly people, and that the economy was so strong, they were doing very well. It was a miracle. And why? Because they got rid of one thing and one thing only, and that's the infection. That's the disease, and it's the same disease that's affecting us today. And this is the same disease that President Trump in America is fighting right now. These are the exact same people. Make no mistake, it's the exact same thing. And all we have to do is become goodly, godly. The answers for human recovery from all of this sickness is going to be so fast and so easy, folks, when we just turn to the right, when we just turn to become goodly, godly people once again. We don't need these politicians. We don't need banks. Interest is impossible. It is illegal. And I apologize for all the interruptions today, and I apologize deeply for basically not having Josh Hardley at all, and Santos breaking out. We'll try and see what we can do about creating stronger connections. But I wish to thank you so much for joining me today, and I promise we are going to be back with parts 2 and 3, and we're going to complete this entire story until you're left at the end of the day with such overwhelming truth in one direction, you have no choice but to embrace the real truth of what happened. It's happening today, and it's what we're trying to do today through President Trump in the United States. So God bless you all. I love you all. I thank you so much for Gary and for Vanessa for helping so much today, and to be so patient with all of the issues that we had with the internet connections today. Thank you to everyone at People for People Radio. Remember, everybody, the show right after ours, Turtle and Crow, just a fantastic show. There are just nothing but great shows on People Radio. So thank you for tuning in. I love you so very much. And just great thanks to everyone here again at People for People. And I will see you next Monday. And great love to all. Thank you and have a beautiful night. Goodbye.